Mike Elko coaches in the SEC now over at Texas A&M, and he's got 12 games on his schedule. That's Andrew Stefaniak of Locked On Texas A&M Aggies. And my take, Andrew, the most important game, not the biggest game. They have College Game Day week 1 against Notre Dame. It is one of the 2 biggest games in all of college football that week. They have Texas to end the regular season. Chris Gordy of Locked On SEC thinks Texas A&M is winning that game, which is, to say, a bold take in the eyes of many. I think the most important game is early in the season against Florida, because regardless of what happens against Notre Dame, win or lose, and we don't do draws because this isn't Europe, that game week 3 at Florida, Andrew, I think will showcase what Texas A&M is really made of. Because if they beat Notre Dame, then they win at Florida, you look at them as, oh, Mike Elko is going to make some serious noise in year 1. But if they lose to Notre Dame and win at Florida, then you're going to look at them and say, okay, this Notre Dame team was just good, because that's a pretty impressive win. It's not a great Florida team, but it's a hard place to play. So that's why I look at Florida as the most important game on Texas A&M's schedule.
You know, I've argued Texas A&M's schedule. It is so interesting the way it's built. You look at it, you know, Spencer, I think we could probably agree the most challenging based on how good teams are projected to be games on the schedule. If you look at them, Notre Dame, LSU, Texas, and Missouri, right? Where are all those games? At home for Texas A&M. So when it comes to the most challenging games to win based on opposing talent, yes, of course, Notre Dame's a tougher game than Florida. So is LSU, all those 4 games. But and I'm glad you didn't tell me your take on this before we started. You said, because you know what I would have said? I was going to say Florida. Now, I have 2 games. I've kind of grouped the Auburn and Florida game into that same category of, if you want to overachieve, you got to take care of business in those road games. And I put Auburn and Florida in a similar category. Some might say, okay, I'm taking Auburn's a hair better, Florida's a hair better. I think that's a bit personal of a take, and people might disagree there. I'd say Auburn's a hair better than Florida, personally, but I think that early in the year, it's going to be, hey, you know, Texas A&M under Jimbo Fisher couldn't win a road game to save their lives. Now, Coach Elko, can you do it? Can you go on the road and win a big football game? So I have kind of taken the cop out and said, I think those 2 games, Auburn and Florida, are the most important on the schedule. But if I had to pick one, I would take Florida, simply knowing early in the year, momentum, get the hype around the Elko era. You start the year with the win over Notre Dame, and then a couple weeks later, you beat Florida on the road. The hype train is going to be picking up some new passengers. So I have to agree with you. It's Florida.
Yeah, and I want to be specific in what I am deeming the most important game, the game that is most going to define how the season goes. Notre Dame is a bigger game. Texas is a bigger game. LSU is a bigger game. Those are better teams, but the importance of a game to continue season momentum, and I've talked about this before, last year when Georgia Tech pulled that stunning upset of Miami and, you know, the whole kneel down debacle, I always feel obliged to remind people that Miami was 4-0 and ranked 17th in the country when that game was played. If they just kneel the ball down, they're 5-0, so they have at least one more win. And I think a game like that takes the wind out of a team's sails and it derails. You think about momentum mostly over the course of an individual game or over the course of a baseball season, 162 games. You and I are both big baseball fans. And that matters a great deal. But I think it can apply to football as well. I think if Miami had won that game, they might have gone on to win 7 or 8 games in the regular season, maybe 9, because I think you have a different mood, a different vibe amongst the coaching staff in the locker room. And I think that Florida game can be that pivot point where you look back and say, boy, if they had just won that game, it would have felt differently. And you could also look back and say the Florida game is the reason that they are under 500 at any point in the year after the Notre Dame game, because they're going to beat McNeese, of course. That's an FCS game. They're going to beat Bowling Green. Then they come back home, or they will be home after that Bowling Green game for a couple games against Arkansas and Missouri. I don't know that Arkansas presents a massive challenge. Missouri certainly does, and I think you could put them in that camp, but I feel a lot different going into that Missouri game if this is a one-loss Texas A&M team, or certainly a no-loss team, because that'd be ranked inside the top 25. But if they're a one-loss Texas A&M team and they're starting to get things rolling, Connor Wegman, who we're going to talk about in a moment, has settled in. That Missouri game is kind of a circle matchup of, hey, you have two teams that have not yet crossed that threshold of getting to the SEC championship game in recent memory that would have the opportunity to do it, and that game could define it.
Completely agree with what you're saying here. I mean, momentum's a real thing in all sports. And in college football more than anything. Even, in baseball, basketball, you're playing more games. In college football, you got 12 opportunities. And, looking at the way the schedule makes up, I am all out on Arkansas. All out. I don't know your stance on Arkansas, Spencer, but I mean, I think Texas A&M, I'm not going to predict them to beat Notre Dame, but if they lose, it's going to be a tight football game. I'll give you that. I mean, you start the year, that game against Missouri, you take care of business against Notre Dame and Florida, you could be and you, of course, beat Arkansas. That game's at where the Cowboys, AT&T with the Cowboys play. You take care of business in those 5 games, a couple upsets probably. You're a top 15, top 10 team with Missouri coming to town. And, Texas and LSU are the two teams that I go, I'm not as convinced. I think Notre Dame is similar to A&M, in all honesty, over years of, Notre Dame's top 10 team. They're great. They're talented. Oh, wait, they aren't very good.
Vegas thinks they're very similar. FanDuel's got the line at 1.5.
Yeah, I've seen that. But I just think Notre Dame's got that preseason hype to them, as they do every year. And I think we're going to go, okay, they're good, but they're not a top 5, top 10 team. And knowing that they have to come to Kyle Field, it's not going to be an easy game for Notre Dame to win. So, my whole argument for Texas A&M and people – the Texas A&M haters out there, and there's a lot of them, and I understand. But here's the deal. You look at this schedule for the Aggies. It is so manageable. Your road games, Auburn and Florida, bottom, mid to bottom tier as teams in the league. They're fine. They're good football teams. Tough places to play. Not gimme wins. South Carolina and Mississippi State, not too sold on them. You go 3-1 on the road in those 4 road games. And obviously, the Arkansas game is technically, kind of supposed to be a home game, but whatever, but you're playing in a neutral site. If you take care of business on those games away from Kyle Field and you pull off some upsets, 8 wins, definitely 8 wins, and an outside chance at 9 is on the table. But I'll tell you this, Spencer, if Texas A&M does not win 8 football games this year, I'll be very, very surprised.
FanDuel's got their win total at 8.5. My instinct is under, but then I look and go, that number's higher than I thought it might be with all the turnover they have in a first-year head coach. Do they know something that I don't? Maybe. We will see. I want to close with this. Last time we talked about Texas A&M here on Locked On College Football. I was discussing with Chris Gordy, and I got a couple messages from people about Connor Wegman because I'd kind of downplayed, what he is, just because I don't fully know. I mean, I've seen glimpses. I just haven't seen a full body of work. And so I said, going into that Texas game, I think you have a quarterback deficit. I'd rather have Quinn Ewers than Connor Wegman. Where do you feel like Wegman can fit into a loaded lineup of SEC quarterbacks?
Well, you're talking about the best kept secret in the SEC, and that's Connor Wegman. Here's the deal. He's not going to receive the preseason hype of some of these quarterbacks. He's not going to receive it because it's been sample sizes. His true freshman season, you saw him out there for 4.5, a couple games out there. Last year, he plays a few games, gets hurt against Auburn. This season, now he's got to stay healthy. Texas A&M cannot keep a quarterback healthy. It's like the worst luck of anything I've ever seen. But, Connor Wegman, it's why if you look, I just saw before we clicked record, Spencer, I was looking top 10 quarterback prospects in the upcoming draft. Connor Wegman's number, it was 6 or 7. Like, the point here is the NFL loves him. He's a player who hasn't had his opportunity to shine yet. And this year, with an offensive line that I think is not going to be elite, but it's going to be better than it was. If they can protect him, give him time, he's got the weapons. He's got a great offensive coordinator. I think Connor Wegman, this is my bold. Chris Gordy, so Gordy says that the Aggies beat Texas. Here's my bold prediction. I think that Connor Wegman is a top 4 quarterback in the SEC when the season's over.
Oh, baby.
I'll get real hot. I know.
Look. Yeah. Is it scorching hot? You got a lot of young, unproven guys like Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart, Carson Beck jump to the top of my mind as those are your top three, but that fourth spot feels more open than it has in past years, perhaps. And I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be a lot of
4, not 3, because
because I think those three are really well established. Andrew Stefaniak, Locked On, Texas A&M Aggies. Check him out on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Andrew, appreciate the time.